All right, next part. So in this part, we are going to be looking at reactive values. So not the word, two words reactive values, but the function called reactive values. So that is reactive values function. This function is going to help us with to solve a problem that we have, and I alluded to it before, and that is the problem of calling the same function multiple times. So here, for example, up here we have list files, and so do we call that anymore? No, we just call it once here. But how about here? List files, and it also runs here twice. So I mean, we could just have a single variable or some place where we could just access this data and didn't have to go like look for it multiple times, and we could just update the list every time there actually was a change to this, instead of trying to read the list of data files multiple times when there isn't any change. So reactive value is going to help us with that. So what the plan is, we're going to make a reactive values like list, or yeah, let's just start from the bottom. So we have reactives, right? So do I have a reactive anywhere here? Yeah, the selected. This is a reactive. So this is only the data that this reactive contains. But the reactive values is like a list of reactive values. So we can change it just like when we say list, and then we say data is empty cars, and like config is huge or something like this. We will have, instead of saying list here, we'll have reactive values, and then we'll access it in the same way that we would access a list, by using the $sign, and then say, like, would say well, we're going to call it RV, right? So we're going to say RV data, and then we would get the empty cars data. And the good thing, or one thing that's really good about reactive values is that if we change it, the changes that we do in maybe the app level will also be updating in the change. Like if we're using this reactive value data somewhere else in some other module, it will also be updated there, and vice versa. So if we update the data value, for example, in one of these modules, it will also update in the app level. And this is good, and maybe somebody thinks that's really bad, because, well, I read somewhere sometime, can't remember who said it, that you shouldn't do this, that you shouldn't have one reactive value that changes in multiple modules, because then it's harder to debug, it's hard to do, or something like that. I can't remember exactly the arguments, because I didn't really buy the arguments, because it just really simplifies a lot of things. Like, so they were argument that you always use reactives or reactive vals within every module, but the problem is that when we want to communicate between modules and like the app file and so on, or other modules, we then have to make like observers, or we have to make like event reactives that like react on the changes within the others. It's just a lot of additional code, instead of just having one reactive values like one reactive value list being stated in one place, and then it's changed everywhere else. I mean, then you will see, like, why does, so you, it's definitely true that we will probably hit a point where we don't know why a reactive value has been changed, and we don't know where the change happens, but I think it's a fair trade-off when you think about the complexity that's needed to not do this. So instead of having the files being listed here at the top outside of the UI object and server object, we are going to change it. We're going to make it here. So file names is, then we just say list files data. And now everywhere where we need the file names, we're just going to call this reactive values list. So I'm going to delete this. And if I'm correct, we use this here, right? Yes. So right now, well, here in the UI, there isn't, the reactive values don't exist, right? Because they are called in the server side, and this is on the UI side. So we could make this a dynamic UI that's read in after the server function starts reading, or like, yeah, reads in the same way like these access outputs or inputs were generated. But I think we're just going to make some placeholder data and then update it later. So we can say there's no data, because we already have an updater here, right? So this observer event updated the selection every time the file name's reactive changed. Well, then we're just gonna say, well, you'll just listen to the reactive values list, and then the data that's in reactive values. All right, and another thing I really like about using reactive values is it's just like lists. So instead of having this parentheses and not knowing when to use it and not using it, or when to use it and when not to use it, we can just do it like this, just exactly like we do with lists. All right, so we have to pass this data into our module as well. So, and as I said before, changes within this module will also be changed, or the changes we do to reactive values in a module will also occur in the app level. But it's not returned, so we're not going to have any return value from upload module. It just happens, right? So we just remove that, and then we need to pass the reactive values in here, and we're just going to pass the whole reactive list, not just the value, but the whole list. All right, because then I think this is what connects them, but I'm not sure. It could be something else, whatever. So we're going to save this. I think all the changes we need, we also have to do here. This should be reactive value file names. And so now every time the file names change, we'll update this. Great. Very good. And then we'll just go into upload and do our changes here. So we now have a new argument for our upload. So that was file, no, that was RV it was. And we're just going to call it null here. And now we should have some validation maybe that says like RV can't be null, but I mean it's gonna break either way. I'm just gonna drop it now. I'm gonna clean this up for file names at least. All right, so we have our event reactive called file names here. I'm not gonna be using this. No, I'll just call it later. So I'm removing this, and then so here, this is the first place we're using it. It was when we did upload our data, we were looking for the list file. So we had a problem here where we couldn't use the file names reactive because it wasn't called before this one was being run. So, but now we have the reactive values list. So we're going to say reactive values and give me the file names. Great. And again, no parentheses or anything like that, just the data. Done. Nothing else. Whoops, almost broke it. All right, I'll save that. And yes, and then when we write it, we want to change the reactive values. So we write it, and then we say the data is now here. So we will say the reactive values file names is now gonna be changed to, and we'll just take all the names that are here, and we can just append. We'll just append the name. This should give us exactly the same as list files. So that even lets us, that even makes it a one computation less. We're just moving the variable into here, So now we should update it when this one changes. And I think, is that all file names? File names. I'm just control F-ing here for file names. And we have a return value. Well, as I said, we don't want a return value. So let's get it out of here. Okay. So I think we're clear. So one thing I'm worried about is that this isn't going to work. I'm not sure if the listener works with reactive values like this, but let's see. All right, so I'm just going to remove some data like that, and then we'll run the app, and then we'll see if it works to upload it. So let's browse this, and this is my data. I want to go to user data, and I want to go, did I delete the wrong ones? I did, but I have the orange data here. Okay, orange, can you upload? Yes. And just to make clear, it's not here. Great. Upload, orange TSV was uploaded to the database. Great. Hey, and it's here. So, small corrections, we did it, it worked. I'm really happy about that. First try, I was really expecting some breaks here on the way, but it seems to work. Great. So see you in the next part.